Imagine for a moment a world where the most influential book in history, the Bible, isn't what we know today. A world where the words of Jesus differ, where his teachings take a new direction, and the stories of his followers are entirely unique. For centuries, the world believed that the four Gospels of the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, were the only definitive records of Jesus' life. These were the foundations upon which Western civilization and the church were built. But then, in 1945, in the scorching heat of the Egyptian desert, a discovery was made that shook these foundations. An accidental find that uncovered a secret buried in the sand, hidden from the world for 1,600 years. This secret wasn't a treasure of gold or silver, but something far more valuable and dangerous. These were ancient books, bound in decaying leather, known today as the hidden Gospels or the Gnostic Gospels. These were the books that history's victors tried to erase. They contained words labeled as heresy and blasphemy. But what were these books? Who wrote them? And the most important question, why were they kept hidden for so many centuries? Today we open this blurred chapter of history to understand what was inside these forbidden texts that terrified the early church. The story begins in December 1945 in Upper Egypt near the Nile River, close to a town called Nag Hammadi. A local farmer named Muhammad Ali Saman was digging for natural fertilizer with his brothers at the base of the Jabal al-Tarif cliffs. It was a barren, desolate place, home to ancient graveyards and ruins. While digging, Muhammad Ali's mattock struck something hard. When they cleared away the sand, they found a large sealed clay jar buried in the earth. At first, they hesitated to open it. Local legends warned that such ancient jars might contain trapped spirits or jinn, but eventually the greed for gold overcame their fear. Perhaps it held the treasure of ancient pharaohs? When Muhammad Ali smashed the jar, no gold poured out. Instead, 13 ancient leather-bound books, known as codices, tumbled into the sand. Their pages were made of papyrus, brittle and decaying. Muhammad Ali had no idea what he had found. To him, it was just old waste paper. He took the books home and threw them near the oven. In a tragic twist of history, his mother used some of these priceless pages as kindling to light a fire over the next few days. Fortunately, the remaining books made their way through local markets and eventually into the hands of antiquities dealers. After years of legal battles, intrigue, and international interest, these books finally reached the Coptic Museum in Cairo and the hands of global scholars. When experts began translating these decaying pages, written in the ancient Coptic language, they were stunned. These texts dated back to the early days of Christianity, likely the 2nd or 3rd century AD. They included Gospels that had been rumored but never seen, such as the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, and the Gospel of Mary. This discovery was on par with the Dead Sea Scrolls, or perhaps even more significant. So, what was written in these books that was so explosive? The texts of the Nag Hammadi library mostly belong to a form of Christianity we now call Gnosticism. Gnosis is a Greek word meaning knowledge. Traditional Orthodox Christianity, which later became dominant, was based on faith. Faith that Jesus was the Son of God, that he died on the cross and rose again. But these Gnostic Christians believed something else entirely. For them, the path to salvation wasn't blind faith, but the pursuit of secret knowledge or gnosis. They believed the human soul is a divine spark trapped in this material, mortal world and body. Salvation meant escaping this prison and returning to the original divine source. To them, Jesus was a savior, but not in the way the church taught. He was a spiritual guide who came from heaven to give humans this secret knowledge and remind them of who they truly are. The most famous and controversial text is the Gospel of Thomas. Unlike the biblical Gospels, it tells no story of Jesus' birth, miracles, or crucifixion. It is simply a collection of 114 sayings of Jesus. It begins with these words, "These are the secret sayings which the living Jesus spoke, and which Didymus Judas Thomas wrote down." In this Gospel, Jesus says, "The kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known. But if you do not know yourselves, you dwell in poverty, and it is you who are that poverty." Just think, what a revolutionary idea that was. It suggested that to find God, You don't need a church, a priest, or a ritual. God is present within you. This message was a direct challenge to the growing structure of the church and the power of the priesthood. Another text, the Gospel of Philip, presents Mary Magdalene as Jesus' closest companion, even hinting that Jesus loved her more than the other disciples, causing them to feel jealous. This was another blow to the traditional, male-dominated church. If these texts are as ancient as the biblical Gospels, why didn't they become part of the Bible? And why were they buried in the ground? To understand this, we must go back to the period between the 2nd and 4th centuries AD. This was a time when Christianity was still becoming an organized religion. There was no single Catholic church or agreed-upon Bible yet. In this era, there were many different Christian groups, all with their own versions of Jesus' teachings. Some groups, like the Gnostics, believed Jesus was purely spiritual and his body was just an illusion. Others insisted he was fully human and fully God. This wasn't just a religious debate, it was a war for power. As the church grew powerful and became the official religion of the Roman Empire, it needed unity. It needed one creed and one set of books that everyone agreed upon. By the 4th century AD, the group that rose to power, what we now call Orthodox, decided which books were right and which were wrong. A turning point came in 367 AD when the powerful bishop of Alexandria, Athanasius, wrote a famous letter. In it, he listed for the first time the 27 books that make up our New Testament today. He decreed that only these books were holy, and any others that didn't meet their criteria were heretical and must be destroyed. It was a systematic purge. Church authorities began hunting down and burning these hidden Gospels. Possessing or reading them became a crime. Scholars believe the Nag Hammadi books belonged to monks from a nearby monastery founded by St. Pachomius. When the bishop's order came, these monks, who likely viewed these Gnostic texts as sacred, decided to save them rather than burn them. They placed these precious books in a jar, sealed it, and buried it in the desert sand under the cover of night, perhaps hoping to retrieve them when things got better. But that time never came. The monks passed away, the monasteries fell into ruin, and that jar sat in its place for 1,600 years until Muhammad Ali's mattock struck it. Beyond Nag Hammadi, other discoveries have shocked the world. The most controversial among them is the Gospel of Judas, discovered in the 1970s but only revealed to the public in 2006. For centuries, Judas Iscariot has been considered history's greatest villain, the man who betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. But this lost gospel tells the complete opposite story. According to this Gnostic text, Judas was not a traitor, but Jesus' most loyal and understanding disciple. In this gospel, Jesus gives Judas secret knowledge and tells him he must perform a difficult task. Jesus says he needs to be freed from his material body so his spirit can return to God. And for this, he needs someone to hand him over to the Romans. Jesus tells Judas, "You will exceed all of them, for you will sacrifice the man that clothes me." From this perspective, Judas didn't betray Jesus. He obeyed his command. He made a great sacrifice, knowing that history would curse him forever. The discovery at Nag Hammadi and other hidden Gospels has forever changed our understanding of early Christian history. These books tell us that the beginning of Christianity wasn't a straight road, but a tangled web of paths. It was a vibrant and diverse era of ideas, beliefs, and interpretations. For some, these texts are merely historical curiosities, paths that were abandoned. But for others, they are a treasure of lost spirituality, the true teachings that fell victim to the politics of power. Do these books represent the real teachings of Jesus? Or were the church fathers right to call them dangerous heresies? That is a question that may never have a final answer. But one thing is certain, that jar in the Egyptian desert didn't just preserve ancient paper, it preserved an alternative side of history. It reminds us that history is always written by the victors, and what we know as truth is often just one side of the story. Beneath the sand, who knows how many more secrets lie buried, waiting to change the way we think about our past. For now, these hidden Gospels remain a deep and mysterious enigma, inviting us to look beyond what we think we know. Don't forget to subscribe to Messiah Presents for more amazing historical videos. See you in the next one.